So the 90s had some really weird trends in gaming, especially when it came to mascots. And I guess all that can be attributed to Sega's creation of Sonic the Hedgehog. He helped drive sales, and every company under the sun just wanted to have their own mascot and do the same that Sega did. And there were some great ones out there like Earthworm Jim and Bob. Those two franchises are great. But then you had a couple of weird ones like Bubsy, Arrow the Acrobat, Artie Lightfoot, Eek the Cat, Frantic Flea, Magic Boy, Mr. Nuts, Packy and Marlin, Pink Panther Goes to Hollywood, Radical Rex, Spanky's Quest, Super Alfred Chicken, Super James Pond, Super Putty, Super Troll Islands, Super Widget, The Adventures of Kid Cleats, The Twisted Tales of Spike McFang, Tin Star, Wiz, and Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel. But I'm getting way off topic. What I want to talk about today are the games with the cool kids. And you know exactly what I mean. The ones that look like Rudy from the Monster Squad. Now, we all know the big ones like Kid Chameleon, Kid Cool, and I guess even Zeke from Zombies Ate My Neighbors would fit into that. But the cool character today that I want to talk about is Harley from Harley's Humongous Adventure. And this is a fantastic 16-bit platformer on the Super Nintendo. It was done by High Tech Expressions, and they did other fantastic titles like Rollerblade Racer, Barbie Supermodel, and We're Back, a Dinosaur Story. So clearly you can see why this game didn't get too much press. But it is the definition of a 16-bit gem on the Super Nintendo. But let's check out the art and design. So Harley is your run-of-the-mill genius, scientist, and all-around cool dude. Their words, not mine. The setting takes place in and around Harley's house that has been taken over by hordes of bugs. To make matters worse, the shrinker machine he was inventing has exploded, scattering the pieces all over his house and shrinking him down in the process. Despite the appearance of it being a pretty standard game, you'll quickly notice that there's a level of polish at work here that proves care went into the game's creation. Controls are tight, weapons are creative, and the levels are not only diverse, but they're filled with equally interesting character design. It understands exactly what it is and doesn't try to be any more than a fun, solid platformer. The characters all have that look like they were molded from clay, which makes sense since they were designed by AOK Animation Studios, the same company that worked on Claymates also for the Super Nintendo. The enemies all have very cartoonish and exaggerated designs like the fire ants with flames on their heads and the eel's eyes bugging out when they let out a burst of electricity. The strangest enemy in the game though has to be the recurring boss, your pet rat, which of course looks nothing like a rat. Each time you fight him, a different part of his body is a weak point, which gets replaced by some robot part. So by the end of the game, your rat is essentially RoboCop with a cannon for a head. Each level is a different area of your house and has appropriate design and obstacles. Think Chippendale Rescue Rangers, but set in a suburban household. The first level is Harley, now shrunken down in his lab with 45 seconds to power up. It's a great way to start the game, and not only to supply you with items, but to teach the player how to use the jetpack to fly after you fuel up, and how to use the suction cups to climb surfaces. There's no enemies on this level, but there's plenty of ways to hurt yourself with flaming Bunsen burners and the sharp ends of screwdrivers. Once you're powered up, you head to the kitchen where you'll be jumping across floating dinner plates with a spiky fork and knife death waiting below. Other obstacles include opening lids with sharp edges and giant rolling cans that shake the entire screen. The next two levels have you fighting through Harley's playroom. It's nice to see that for a kid genius, he still likes playing with building blocks and his wallpaper choice hasn't evolved past a 6-year-old. The first part is one of my favorite levels where you drive a miniature tank and fight against killer bouncy balls and spinning jacks. The color and animations on the jacks really give them a nice shiny and three-dimensional effect though. The second part of the playroom is where the game really opens up and the levels become more challenging and maze-like. Hordes of bugs infest the level, but you'll come across one of the best weapons in the game, the marbles. You drop them like a weight and they'll bounce and roll in the direction you're facing, hitting anything in its path. They're especially helpful for areas where enemies are directly below you or those harder to reach areas. One small gripe I have is that with whatever weapon you pick up, it automatically selects that weapon instead of just adding it to your ammo count. While this is frustrating, credit has to be given for the ability to quickly change weapons with L and R when you're inconvenienced with a pickup you don't want. Your weirdo pet rat is waiting for you soon after in the library to smush you into oblivion by jumping on you and dropping an endless supply of 10-gram weights. Lucky for you, they also spawn items, which makes this battle pretty simple. The rat jumps in a very predictable pattern, and all you have to do is keep hitting him in the legs until he scurries off. The next level has you traveling to your bathroom and easily has the most unique level design. By now you probably noticed on the level intro screens there's a small quote of text under their name that's usually something quirky. Here, however, it's hinting at how to actually finish the level. At the start, you fall into a full bathtub that's infested with electric eels. The only way to go from here is down the drain, which leads to a maze of pipes full of items, some of which are bubbles that refill your air meter. Naturally, this would lead you to believe that it's a maze and you need to find the correct route out and the locations of the bubbles to keep you alive. After some exploring and lost lives, you'll see that every way is a dead end. This leaves you with the small quote that says, "Ride a big bubble" from the beginning. If you climb out of the far side of the tub, you'll see a soap dish with a bar of soap that you can push into the water and make it spin while running on it. Keep doing that and you'll eventually create a big bubble and start floating upward to the actual end of the level. It can be a bit difficult to steer yourself around the other bubbles waiting to pop yours, but after a few tries, you'll come to a ridiculous amount of towel racks that act as platforms. Avoid the puking bugs. Yes, they puke on you, and the shrinker part is yours. The next 2 levels take place in Harley's library, full of traps straight out of elementary school. Pinching binders, sharp pencils, and staple removers are around every corner with tricky jumps on floating eraser platforms. But I'd have to say the giant workbooks in the background threatening us with hours of homework is clearly the scariest part. One really nice touch though are the staplers used to propel you upwards that shoot out a staple after being jumped on. The final areas of the game take you to a giant block castle which has a pretty interesting design, but it also feels like a retread of the earlier playroom level. Finally, after that, you make your way out of the house through the air vents and up to the roof. It's safe to say the game designers took just a bit of inspiration from Chip and Dale again here. After you make your way through a maze of a fire ant hive, you find yourself traveling back to your lab for the final piece of your shrinker machine and to finish off your pesky pet rat. The lab is a massive vertical level, but isn't too tough as long as you take your time and plan out your jumps. Your rat is now referred to as Cannon Head, and boy, they weren't kidding. He's now armless, legless, and half his head is replaced with just that, a giant cannon. Watch his patterns and he'll go down easily and you can finally return Harley to normal size. The pixel art of his clay mold expanding looks great. That's something I would love to own in my video game collection. So that's Harley's Humongous Adventure, and what an adventure it is. I wish more people knew about this game because it really is such a fun platformer. Thankfully it hasn't gone up in value and you could pick up a loose cart for around 10 bucks. And as always, thank you so much for watching guys. I'll see you next time, and keep it pixelated.